Hey, what's happening? It's Bill Smith. Today's July 3rd, 2018. We have a couple Q posts I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to mention a story that did not make the Q post that I know you will want to hear about. So the last post to post was post number 1674. Q says, add another to the list. It's a link to the NPR.org article titled, Another Top Justice Department Lawyer Steps Down Following Earlier Departures. Q says, conspiracy? Coincidence? Let's check it out. This is the article. Now, NPR is slanted. I didn't know it was a liberal. I kind of thought it was independent. I know it was government funded. They get a lot of grants. It stands for public radio, but it's very slanted. It's very liberal. And you can kind of pick up some of it if you look through some of their articles. But I want to point the big stuff out in the article. The guy's name was Scott Schools. He was a top aide to the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. And Scott is planning to leave the Justice Department at the end of the week, according to two people familiar with his decision. His decision to step down. He was not fired. He advised former acting Attorney General Sally Yates. I think she got into some trouble there, or we had some issues with her in the past. She's been in the news. Slate magazine did an article on him, called him, quote, the most important unknown person in Washington, D.C. Take a look at that real quick. Here's the article. I haven't read the article. I just figured I want to scan over it and get it in the video. Never know how these things, man, this is a really long article. It's a good thing I didn't waste my time reading that. Slate. What's Slate going to tell you? Probably the same stuff that NPR is going to tell you. That's why they link to them. Anyway, Schools worked alongside with another Justice Department mainstay, David Margolis. I've heard his name before. And he will be joining a job in the private sector. So we'll see what happens to him. But he's leaving. Now, the interesting part is that they call him, they say that he is the highest ranking career lawyer at the Justice Department. And they call it a brain drain. At a time when the department, the DOJ, is under attack by President Donald Trump and his allies in Congress. He'll be replaced on an acting basis by Bradley Weinsheimer. It's an interesting last name, Weinsheimer, who currently works in the National Security Unit. Weinsheimer has spent 27 years at the DOJ, where he tried homicide and public corruption cases. Unlike Schools, however, Weinsheimer will not supervise or otherwise be involved in overseeing the special counsel team probing Russian election interference and whether any Americans tied to the Trump campaign took part. So, Scott Schools was involved with the Russian collusion investigation. And now Weinsheimer, who replaced him, will not be. Previous post, back to the Q post. This is QAnon.pub if you'd like to go read these posts yourself. Post number 1673. And Anon's talking law stuff here regarding the Awan brothers. We already figured this out but I can add that I have just suspected for some time that the state charges were just a delay tactic until the main indictments are unsealed. It is also possible, or even likely, given the way they treated Awan, that he will be a prosecution witness, since they would never have let him wander otherwise. Lots more winning in store. I'm enjoying the movie. So Q replied to that. Matters of national security. Very simple, clean post. It gives a link to the Justice Department, justice.gov. The link is Criminal Resource Manual. Synopsis, Classified Information Procedures, CIPA Act, C-I-P-A. Here's a link to it. Now, I've looked this over a little bit. There might be more to read here, but I'm going to point out the most important stuff that I see. Talks about pre-trial conference, protective orders, and discovery. So point number one right there. After a criminal indictment becomes public, the prosecutor remains responsible for taking reasonable precautions against the unauthorized disclosure of classified information during the case. This responsibility applies both when the government intends to use classified information in its case in chief, as well as when the defendant seeks to use the classified information in his or her defense. The tool with which the proper protection of classified information may be ensured in indicted cases is the Classified Information Procedures Act, CIPA, C-I-P-A. So the important part is that it says CIPA is a procedural statute. So it doesn't add or detract from anybody's rights or the obligations of the government. Rather, the procedure for making these determinations is different than the normal legal system, in that it balances the right of a criminal defendant, in this case Imran Awan, Debbie Wasserman-Shultz tech support guy, with the right of the sovereign, the United States government, to know in advance of a potential threat from a criminal prosecution to its national security. So that last part is really important. National security. So this is about an indicted case. So it's already been indicted. There's an indictment paper. It's probably sealed. It's probably on that list of 40,000. It's up to 40,000 now. Okay? And it took a very, very big team to accomplish that. And the recent Q posts have said that the reason why they were able to do it was because they brought on Huber. So Huber is running a big team. They have a lot of resources, and Huber's kind of been the key to making this happen. And that's why they didn't hire a second special counsel. I'll show you that post here in a second. Okay, so it looks like they have indicted Imran Awan on some sort of conspiracy charge or who knows what, right? And he's being allowed to walk around because he's going to be a state's protected witness. He'll be a protected witness. Don't think that they're not trying to kill that guy. I mean, if he's the linchpin in the whole thing, then Debbie Wasserman-Shultz and her thug group, whoever she's got on speed dial, if you remember, she used like a voice suppressor at like a payphone or something to call and ask about herself. That happened not too long ago, back in like May or something, March. Anyway, don't think that they wouldn't go cap that guy. So that's very important stuff. Now, the rest of the Q posts recently have kind of circled around this. Here's Donald Trump bringing up Awan and Debbie Wasserman-Shultz, which I just talked to you about. It says the Democrat IT scandal. Remember, he was an IT guy, but he didn't just do work for Debbie Wasserman-Shultz. He was an aide for her, but he did work for like 70-something Democrats in Congress. He was involved with everybody, had their passwords, had all their secret documents, had access to everything, right? And it's not to say, I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but one possibility that I've considered personally is that Debbie Wasserman-Shultz knew what they were up to. They had directives under her to accomplish those tasks, and that she allowed him or them, him and his brothers, to do it. And that's probably why she was able to get so many Democrats to go along with the scheme to give the IT guys access to their stuff. You see what I'm saying? Because then Debbie would have access to all their secret stuff that she couldn't possibly get a hold of. Even though she was the head of the DNC, there's lots of other stuff at the government level that they don't have access to, like their State Department employee emails, stuff like that. So if you use the Awan brothers to go in there and do tech support, they could set up people's email accounts, have access to their secret passwords, things like that. So Debbie and the DNC could get access to all the other DNC people, even if they didn't have access before. So I just want to toss that in there. That's me thinking out loud here. I don't know if that's true. I haven't read that on the Chans. I don't lurk very much. That's just me saying that. That's Bill Smith. So he brought up, he said, why was the case against Awan filed under bank fraud? The result today is regarding bank fraud. See the last stuff, connect it. The swamp is being drained. So they connected him. This bank fraud stuff had to do with his car dealership. He was laundering money. And they indicted him on that so that they could run discovery rights. And that's what this other Anon was saying here next. And that's why he replied to that. So cool stuff. Here's another post, the previous post. This is post number 1671. It's a response to a tweet from a guy named Lee Stranahan, @Stranahan. says, breaking. I'm at the federal courthouse, and it seems that Imran Awan's plea deal says that he cannot be charged with any previous non-violent crime. So Q says, think logically, think about the IG report, think about what's missing. Do you think this was going to be litigated in this setting? Case that implicates some of the most senior elected officials on treason is being handled by the appropriate office. Think national security. So this goes back to like the 12 generals that we were talking about in like March, where they were setting up, what is it? I can't remember exactly the details. And I don't know if we ever actually got proof, but they were setting up like a 50,000 person holding in Guantanamo Bay. We had Sessions down there. He did a visit so he could look at the lawyer offices down there, make sure that there was bug-proof rooms that the Guantanamo Bay prisoners could talk to their lawyers inside of, like glass rooms or something. So that was all going on back then. If they're handling treason charges, we've already covered all this. This happened to do with like putting generals offline in remote locations. I don't know if we're past all that. Maybe they've handled the dangers around that. But I know that they were talking about doing remote trials, having generals remote conferenced in, so that 12 generals could all be in 12 different locations and all be presented the trial. And they needed 12 rather than the normal 10, I think, because if I remember for memory, that's how many you needed to enact the death penalty. Which, if you're trying high treason, you better include the death penalty, man. Otherwise, people will do it again. So that's what this is all coming from. No, it's not going to be litigated in the open. The treason stuff is happening behind closed doors. And actually, here's what I don't understand. If the NSA has access to everything, why would they need to go do discovery? I know they need to build a case, but in matters of national security, right? When you're trying high treason charges against like ex-presidents, ex-secretaries of state, and the NSA already has all that information, I would imagine at some point they've signed some document somewhere that says the NSA has access to everything you do, ever, anywhere, personal or not. I would just think that there'd be some kind of government contract that you would sign like that. Maybe there's not. Maybe they still have to build the case under the Constitution. I don't know. Just things to talk about. So now we're back to July 2nd. I'm not going to cover these posts. There's more here. Talking about Stormy Daniels. There should be a breaking story today. I haven't seen it yet. It's 1 p.m. Bringing up Five Eyes, evil corruption. Lots of good stuff to talk about. Now, I got a few minutes left, so I want to cover this one other thing here. But before I do that, here's a quick article on CNN. It says, ex-House staffer Imran Awan, I guess that's him, subject of conspiracy theories, he is, pleads guilty to bank fraud charges. So Imran Awan, breaking news today, just pled guilty to bank fraud charges. Struck a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to making a false statement on a bank loan application during a court appearance in Washington, D.C. So here's some mainstream media to confirm everything that we've just been talking about. Now, before I leave you, know about this guy. His name was Skydance Macmahon. Macmahon? Macmahon. Here he is dressed up like the Nightwing character. I haven't confirmed this is the guy, but this is from Washington, D.C. at the convention. And when I tell you about what this guy was up to, then you'll understand why I think that was him dressed up like a comic book superhero. Federal employee Skydance Macmahon used his work phone to make child pornography. Now, long story short, he got a woman in Canada to set up a camera in the bathroom where she had 5 little kids, and he would look at them through his cell phone, naked, taking baths and doing all kinds of other stuff. Who knows what. But here, it says in the indictment, it says that he was engaged in producing videos depicting sexual acts with women. Also children. So children and women. So we will get more about this. It says he used a Kik and a Dropbox on his work iPhone and had child pornography in his office at the Foreign Services Institute. Here are his court documents. If you'd like to look through them yourself, you can find them on the Pacer system. I'll leave the link below. Until next time, this is Bill Smith. Thanks for watching.